Do you happen to struggle with showcasing lots of badges, ratings, or small images in general on your website without cluttering the page? I have an efficient solution for you. We're going to build a smooth scrolling badge carousel using Tailwind and Motion.dev in a Next.js project. Why Tailwind and Motion? Well, Tailwind helps us rapidly style components, and Motion.dev makes creating beautiful animations straightforward, responsive, and performant. My name is Samuel Horn, a creative developer at Prismic, and what I love most is combining design and code to create intuitive user experiences. By the way, during this video, I'm using Cursor as my IDE. It's clean, efficient, and the free tier is more than enough to get you started. What type of AI tools do you use on a daily? Let me know in the comments below. Now let's get coding. So to get started building, we have set up a basic Prismic project with a page type. I created a home page. And in Slice Machine, we just have that page type. And we want to add a slice, our first slice, which would be the badge carousel slice. So let's use the new AI feature to generate this from an image. So I just upload the image that I exported from this Figma file here. And within here, I can see that Prismic is analyzing the image, trying to make sense what fields to create. I would create a heading, subheading, a group with a number, some text, and a group with badges, right? So the nice thing now is that we have the screenshot already added, of course. And here we have the fields, and I think it did a very good job. I would probably rename some of these, which I will do, but off screen. And I don't need a label here, so I will remove that field. Otherwise, it's the exact same fields that I would have created. I will just go and rename some of them. And that's renamed. That should be it for our slice model. So what we can do next is review those changes, push them to Prismic. And then in the Prismic repository, if we head over to Prismic and go to the home page, we should be able to add the badge marquee slice, which should have the fields for the coding part. So to start coding, what we need first is some initial structure. So let's first add a class name to this section container for the whole slice with some padding to the sides. And then let's remove this placeholder content and create a wrapping container that should wrap the whole thing. And this container, let's style it with some class names. So basically what we're doing here is that we're creating a grid once we reach a bit bigger than mobile. And we make that grid, let's make it 2 columns instead of 12. And we add a bit of gap between the columns. We add some padding to the bottom and top. We center the container, put a max width on it, and center the items within it. And inside here, we should create the 2 columns that we have in our Figma. So we have 2 columns, right? And we probably want those columns stacked on top of each other on mobile. So the first thing is to create a div for the first column. And for now, let's just say text content within it. And for this div, we want to add a couple of class names. So let's do that. So class name. And we want this to be 1 column, span 1 column on small screens, and then we want the inside of it to be a flex column layout. And then we also create one for the badges. And it looks like Cursor did a pretty good guessing game here. I don't know if we need to make this the same with a flex column though, but we could add some margin top and remove that margin top once we hit the grid layout again, to make it align good on mobile. So if we take a look at the browser, we should have a grid layout that on mobile resets back to just be columns, which looks like it should. Now that we have the initial structure set up, instead of this text content, let's render the actual content from Prismic within here. And what Cursor suggests is that we use the Prismic rich text component, which is a good idea. We, of course, need to import it from Prismic React as well. And we don't want text here. We want, I think we call it heading, yes. So we have a heading field that we can use here. And exactly, we have a subheading as well. And to style this, let's first look at what we have. So we have the correct info here. Let's not style it just yet. Let's also add the numbers before we style it. So inside this same column, we want to check if we have any numbers filled before we display them, right? So we can use the isFilled helper from Prismic. IsFilled. And if a group field of slice primary numbers is filled, we want to render something, right? So let's do that and end this here. Oops. Like that. And what do we want to render? So if we take a look on Figma again, we have a line here that should render if we have the numbers, and then we have 2 columns of numbers, right? So let's create a React fragment here. And first of all, we should have that line. So let's just create a regular hr. And then we need to loop over the numbers. But first, let's create a container for them. And within this container, I want to loop over the numbers. I think that looks good, but let's remove this for now. Let's remove the class names. And I don't think this is entirely correct. So let's leave it at that. But for the numbers, once we have the container for the numbers, we could also add the numbers, right? So let's add a span where we put the number, and we have a span where we put the text, but let's create a p tag out of that instead. And this should probably show us all the content we need. So we have the heading, we have the subheading, we have a number with text, we have a number with text, and then we have the badges column. So now I think it's time to kind of go over and style this column a bit. So if we head back to the code, first up, we need to style the Prismic rich text components. And since these render HTML elements within them, I can't put a class name directly on this because it would style everything within it. And I don't even think it's supported to have a class name here. Nope, we can't have a class name on this element. So what we need to do is we need to create some kind of component serializer. And since I know for this heading field that we only have a heading 2 in here, we can do like this. And if I have a heading 2, I will render an h2 that looks like this. And that should make it bigger, yes. And for styling, I will just copy some classes I have already set up to don't do too much styling. So let's add that to have the header correctly styled. It looks much better. And let's do the same for this one. So let's add a components serializer here. But instead, we say if it's a paragraph, because that's the only tag we allowed here as well, right? We can do something like this. We don't need the node on any of these either. And for that paragraph, let's add some class names as well. Just basic Tailwind styling here. And that should make the paragraph look better. I think we forgot, if we take a look back in Figma, we can see that this text is a bit muted, right? And I don't think it should be bold. So we can see we have a muted color that is more muted than this heading color here. So let's get back to the code and add that class as well. And for now, I'm just hard coding the colors since this is a fresh Tailwind installation. Obviously, you should probably add these to your variables. And if we take a look again at the code, now this has a more muted color. So that's it for those. Let's look at some styling for this horizontal ruler. I'm just, again, going to copy a couple of class names and add them here. We don't need this col span. So basically, I'm just adding some margin. I want this to have a border of 2 to make it 2 pixels high. And I want a very subtle color on it. So let's check how that looks. We have a very light border, good. And now we come to the styling of the numbers. So first of all, for this wrapping div here, I think what we need is to first have a flex column like that on mobile. And then on larger screen, we would want a grid. And we would want 2 grid columns and some margin top and a gap. That's good. And for the wrapper of the actual numbers, so on very large screens, let's add a col span of 1. And let's add a flex. Let's add item center and probably a gap here as well. Now I think the number layout should be better, like we expected. So this is the way we expect it from Figma to be on larger screen, right? And if we move it down, yeah, this works. And the badges move down as well. So I think this is good. Now we just need to add some styling to the actual numbers. And for the number, since we want this kind of purple background and stuff, I also have some classes copied, which I think we can just, class name, and paste it in there, where I basically add some text styling to make the text large, some background colors. I'm making a flex out of it to be able to center the text within it. And looking at that, we should have good looking numbers, which should be smaller on smaller screens. So that looks good. Let's take care of this text lastly. So let's make it look a bit more like that. I think we can just add classes here as well. So let's add a class name and paste some classes. And now this text should look better as well. So I think that's all the setup we need to do for this left column. Next, I think we can go and actually tackle the badges. Okay, to start creating the badges, let's head back to the code. And the first thing I know is that you remember we created in the slice, we created just one big group of badges. And the first thing I know is that we have 2 rows of badges. So we probably need to split this into 2 rows, right? And what we can do here, I guess, is we create half, we can call it half, where we slice primary badges. We take the length of the badges array, which, if you remember, we added 8 badges and divide it into 2, which becomes 4 badges for this specific case. And then we can create, I think Cursor got it right there. So a first half and a second half, where the first half is basically the first 4 badges and the second half is the last 4 badges. And this will be dynamically, of course, if we add more badges. And next up, we should add the badges to, let's collapse all of this so we don't have to look at it. We should add the badges here, right? But to do that, we will need a lot of logic for each row of badges. So I think it makes sense to create a new component. We could create a new component within this file somewhere, but for this one, I think it's simpler to just do it in this file. So let's set up a badge row component, or yeah, let's call it badge row. Badge row. And this should just be a function with some props. Oops, with some props. Let's have just badges for now. And, or no, not badges. Let's call it children. And this children prop should just be a React node. I don't know, we have a couple of TypeScript errors here. So we should be good. So we have this new badge row component. And for this component, obviously, I want to render a couple of badges for each row. The first thing, though, is I think we need a wrapper div that has overflow hidden. Overflow hidden and flex to have the badges sit next to each other. And then let's create another div, which also has class name flex for now. And inside here, whoops, we create a span, which also has class name flex. This will all make sense later. And inside this one, we will add the children. So the problem here is if we have imagine we just add 4 badges or something to this slice, we will have very short rows that can't loop. So what I will do is I will take this and duplicate it a couple of times. Let's try with 3 for now. So it will duplicate the badges to have a bit more badges. And this will be what a badge row look like for now. And we should be able to use this within our badges section here. So what I think we can do, we know we want 2 rows, right? So exactly like cursor suggests here, we want 1 row. Let's see, let's remove this for now. We want 1 row, the first row, where we map over the first half of badges. Let's put an index here as well to use as a key. And then within this badge row, the children would be like, yeah, let's put a div and then a Prismic next image, just like it suggests. We need to obviously import that from Prismic. We shouldn't. We should import that from Prismic.io/next. Okay. So we should have, for each in the first half, we should have a div with an image. And let's do that for the second badge row as well, like that. I think we're good. I think we can remove these classes for now and these classes for now. Let's just take a look at how it looks in the browser. Okay, so as you can see, we have duplicated our badges 4 times to have enough badges already. We get a warning here that we don't have an alt property. We should, of course, always have that. But for now, I will add a fallback alt to these rows like that to get rid of the error for now. So now we have 2 long rows of badges here. And now let's see what we need more here. We can add some styling to these badges containers. So for example, for this wrapping div, I'm just going to add a couple of classes here to set the size for the badges. And I will do the same here, obviously, like that, and see if we have a different look now. Starting to look a bit more as it should. So we have the overflow hidden working. We know we have a long row of badges on each of these. Let's see what we can do more. Did I add any classes to the wrapping column? Okay, so that's what we have. Let's also add some class names to these images to make them auto size. I think that should make them bigger because they're SVGs right now. Yeah, now we have the right sizing for them. So I think that's it for the styling of the badges for now. So we should start to try to make them move on scroll. Okay, next up, try to get our badges moving. And to do that, let's start to editing the badge row. But before that, we need to install some dependencies. And what we need to do is we need to add Motion, formerly Framer Motion, that is now renamed to Motion. And we need to install Motion 1 utils, which contains a wrap util that we want to use. So let's add those 2 dependencies. And that should be good. And now we can import some stuff that we need. So I will add import from Motion React with all the components that we'll need. I will also add the import for the wrap util from Motion 1. So we have all of that imported, and we can start to set up our badge row with animations. So first of all, within Framer Motion, we need a kind of a motion value, which is basically a value that can be animated over time. So let's call that base X and just use a motion value of 0 for now. And then we need to detect scroll position because we want the badges to move based on how the user scrolls. So let's import scroll Y from, nope, that's not what I want. So I want scroll Y from use scroll, like that. And this is to get the value of how much the user have scrolled down the page. And then we want to get the scroll velocity. So let's create a const that's called scroll velocity. And for that, we can use the velocity with the scroll Y value. That good? And then we need to smoothen out this, and we can do that with a spring animation. So let's create a spring animation. Smooth velocity, we can call it smooth velocity. Let's see what it made. So it uses a spring animation based on scroll velocity. That's correct. And damping, let's adjust damping to 50 to reduce the oscillation a bit and be less bouncy, basically. And let's remove those two, but let's add a stiffness as well. And stiffness should be pretty high. This means it's more snappy, you could say. Let's remove that. So that's for basically the scroll detection. Now we want to take the scroll velocity and transform it into a speed multiplier. So let's do that next. So to do that, let's call it velocity factor maybe. And for that, we'll use the use transform hook. Use transform, smooth velocity, and so this would be, the first value would be the scroll pixels in seconds. So let's start with 0 to 1000 to see how that feels. And then we want to map that to an output of a speed multiplier. So 0 means 0 and 1000 pixels would mean 5 times that speed basically. And let's also let's add a clamp value to this, or rather clamp false. And what clamp false means is that it allows us to go outside this range. So imagine you're scrolling really fast, like 1500 pixels in 1 second. Then we allow this value to go above 5, for example. So we don't clamp it. That's it for the velocity factor. Let's create a position to be used in our CSS. So const X would be use transform. What does it say here? So yeah, it uses our base X position, which we created up here, which is a motion value. And then it, this is where we should use the wrap. So I'll write it first and explain it later. So let's take the wrap function we imported and put -20 and -45 and value and percentage here. So that's it. So basically, to explain what this does is that we transform the base position into a percentage for CSS, and the wrap function creates an infinite loop by resetting the position. So when the position goes below -45%, it wraps back to -20, and this creates kind of a seamless infinite scroll effect. And let's also create a direction factor. And for this, we want to use a ref. We import that from React. And this reference should be a number. Initially, it should be 1. So basically, we will change this to be 1 when the user scrolls down and be -1 when the user scrolls up. And next up, we need this. So even if a user isn't scrolling, we want those to be scrolling all the time. So for that, let's use animation frame like that. That's good. And let's create, I think Motion cursor had it right here. So we want to create a move by to calculate how much we should move. But this is not what I want at all. So move by is our direction factor, current since it's a ref, times our base velocity. Where is my base velocity? I forgot that. So we need to take another prop here. We want a base velocity to be able to set the direction of the scroll, basically. So this should be a number, exactly like that. So we need that base velocity in here. So move by direction factor current times base velocity times delta by 1000. That seems correct, yes. So again, to explain kind of what this does, is we calculate the base movement. So the direction factor determines the scroll direction, which is, as I said, 1 or -1. Base velocity is our starting speed, and delta divided by 1000 converts milliseconds to seconds for smooth motion, if that makes sense. And then what we want to do is we want to do some kind of conditional to determine if we're scrolling up or down. So this is correct. If velocity factor get is less than 0, then the direction factor current should be -1. Else if it's more than 0, then the direction factor should be 1. So that's correct. And then let's affect our move by variable we created. So plus equals. And here we want, again, the direction factor dot current. Direction factor dot current times move by times velocity factor get. And to explain what this does, we want to kind of apply the velocity factor to our movement. This like speeds up or slow down the base based on how fast the user scrolls. So the faster the scroll, the more it affects the animation, basically. And then finally, within this use animation frame, we want to update the base position with our calculated movement. And this new position will be transformed into a CSS percentage. And I think Cursor got it right there. So let's say that. And now we can take this X variable we created here and apply it to this row. So exactly, we put a style with X here. And it complains now that it doesn't know this, and we need to create this div into a motion div to be able to move it. So framer motion, export this motion, which you can put in front of any regular HTML element to create it into a motion div, and now framer motion knows how to animate this. We have some kind of error. Yeah, base velocity is missing. So we added this base velocity property, which is required. So we need to add base velocity to our rows as well. And actually, I think that for the first row, let's set a base velocity of minus 0.5. And for the second row, plus 0.5. And this way, the rows will move in opposite order. And what do we have here now? We have an error. Okay. We need to convert our client, of course, into a client component since we use React hooks. So this should be a client component. And now you can see we have this auto-animated scrolling behavior here. And of course, we could make this faster if we want by adding the base velocity here. So if I say +1 here and -1 here, it will move probably twice as fast. Yes. And just to test this with some scroll, now it's the only thing we have here. But if I go back here and we, on this section, we can set a MY of, let's say, 80 device height. This will make it so we have some margin, so we can test that the scrolling goes slower and faster depending on how fast I scroll with the mouse. So that's kind of also what we wanted. Next up, it seems that we should add, if you remember, in the Figma file, we have some fading in, fading out here. We have some margins that we forgot to add. So I think we tackle that next. So let's fix the final parts, adding some fades to the sides and some margins in between here. And I don't know if you noticed, but you can clearly see that we have a looping problem here as well. You see the glitch there in the animation, and I think it becomes even clearer if we bump up the speed of the auto scrolling. So let's set the base velocity to something like 6 and -6 here just to see the glitch. Save that, go back to the browser, and you will see that we have a jump. So you see there, it's not a perfect loop, the scroll kind of jumps. And this could be explained by, you remember on the, here in the badge row component, we kind of duplicate the children 3 times. And the fix would be to duplicate them a 4th time. And this is because this calculation here basically tells that we should loop our children in a range of 25%, so between -20 and -45 to have a seamless loop. And 25%, of course, is 1/4 of 100, and that's why we need to have times for the children here. We could, of course, if we feel the need, if we know that the marketer would upload enough badges, we could just keep 2 rows here and adjust this to be between a range of 50 instead. But changing this to 4 rows now should make this loop totally seamless. So it's like infinite with no glitches at all. Knowing that, we can go back to cursor again and fix the speeds here to be -1 and +1. I think that's good enough. That's a good speed, and when you scroll, you have faster speed. Let's tackle the space in between here first. So to adjust the spacing, what we can do is basically just add flex call and a gap like that. And a gap of 24 seems correct. We can always check Figma 32, so we should have a gap of 8 instead, which I think is 32 to be more correct. So head back here. Now we have the correct gap. Let's add some fades to the sides. And to add these type of fades, I think the easiest would be to put a position relative on this one, and then just 2 absolutely position divs here. I can copy some class names for them. So let's add a div. Let's make it auto-closing itself. And then class name, and let's add some class name. So what we're doing is we're absolutely positioning this and hide it from the mouse pretty much. So we can't kind of touch it. We put it on top of the badge rows, and we place it top 0, bottom 0, and left 0, so it will be on the left side. And then we put width on it, that if we're bigger than the smaller screens, put it left 12 instead, because you know we had a margin somewhere here or a padding on the actual wrapper for these. I don't remember where it were. It's somewhere around here. And then we have a background gradient to the right, to transparent, with 35% and from white, and this should give us a transparent fade. Okay, we probably remove that, so we can remove the setting of the left 12 here and always keep it to the left like that. And now we have this fade here. We should probably adjust the gap here instead between those as well. And to do the exact same thing on the other side, let's just duplicate this. And instead of having it left 0, let's have it right 0. And set the gradient to go to the left instead of to the right. And we should be good to go. So we have a fade there as well. So now this works good. But as you can see, I think this space is not corresponding to what we have in Figma here. We have a bit more space. So we have something like, 48 between. And what we should do for that is we have a gap of 6 here. Maybe that's good for a bit smaller screen, but on large, let's say the gap should be 12, which is 48. So if we check again, now we have a bigger gap here, but it should go back to be small here to don't. So you at least can see a couple of badges. And we have the working badge slice made. All right, that's a wrap. We built a smooth scroll reactive badge carousel that's way better than the usual grid overload. Hopefully this gave you some ideas for improving your own components. If you like this, drop a comment and let us know what types of components you struggle with. It really helps us decide what to cover next, and chances are that if you're stuck on it, others are too. And if you want to dive deeper into modern front-end techniques, building full websites with Prismic and Next.js, I highly recommend checking out Alex's long-form courses. They're super extensive and takes you from a blank project all the way to a polished production-ready site. Real-world workflows, best practices, and everything in between. Appreciate you watching this, and I hope to see you soon.